Well, moms today are often overwhelmed and stressed out and perhaps a little underappreciated as well. If you're a mom and this describes you, our next guest can offer some great advice. Amy Rienow is a mom of 7, has a master's degree in clinical psychology, and together with her husband, Dr. Rob Rienow, they founded Visionary Family Ministries. Amy is also the author of Not So Perfect Mom, Learning to Embrace What Matters Most. Amy, welcome to Bridge City News. So great to have you on today.
Nice to be here.
Okay, so first of all, Amy, can you maybe give us a brief overview of your ministry and your book?
Okay. Well, our ministry started as a result many years ago. Back in 2004, we had 4 kids, and honestly, kind of struggling with my this issue with my husband was a youth pastor, very active in church. We had a huge youth ministry. We had these little 4 kids of our own, and I was really yearning for my husband to be the spiritual leader at home, which really was not happening. And I was almost at the point of kind of giving up on that dream because I just sort of I don't necessarily recommend this policy what I did, but I kind of like scanned the landscape, right, of all the other Christian men I knew and my friends and their husbands, and I thought, no one's really doing this. So maybe what I'm hoping for just doesn't exist, or it's too pie in the sky. And then the Holy Spirit really got a hold of my husband, and he had a kind of a summer of repentance and realized that he was putting basically his spiritual opportunities ahead of his spiritual responsibilities, which were his own children, and turned his heart, which led to a massive change in our family, which led to one domino falling, and here we are now. That was 2004, and 2022, we are been doing this ministry full time since 2011.
Wow. It's interesting because I mean, of course, you're admitting that you played the comparison game there, which so many of us are guilty of, right? And then I think that's a common theme with maybe families of ministries, that you put so much into your community and your church and you tend to forget about your own family. So it's interesting. So you're looking at your husband's shortcomings. As a mom, did you ever feel like you weren't doing enough either?
Oh my goodness. Well, that is what brought forth this book, Not So Perfect Mom, Learning to Embrace What Matters Most, because, I played that comparison game as well. And not just to friends, but to the world, to so many different things. I think I believed what I would now call a lie that, we as moms can have it all. Like I really thought I could, excel in my profession, excel as a youth pastor's wife, and excel at being this wonderful mom at home and doing all of these things. And gradually, as the Lord brought to really to death a lot of like my ability to be this woman who had it all, like it was just through health problems, through all sorts of things, I kind of had to get down to level zero and evaluate what is most important and what do I truly want to be successful at. And I realized that one of those things was, as I say in my book, a heart connected, lifelong discipleship relationship. I think it's so easy as moms to get caught up in almost like a mindset. Again, another chapter of my book is that like we're creating products instead of people. Do you know what I mean? In the sense that we have to create these super kids that are going to excel at something and get the scholarship and, have all these badges. And somehow that defines us as being great moms. When in reality, I don't think that's what any of us really want. We want our kids to be happy, and we want a lifelong relationship with them, a heart connected relationship. And I call it a discipleship relationship as well, because we want to be, God put us in their lives to have this impact on their lives, to help lead them and guide them. And that only comes through heart connection. So that's what the title, Learning to Embrace What Matters Most. It was really a journey of learning to embrace this as my primary mission as mom, and letting go of a lot of these standards that I was placing on my children and on myself.
Yeah, I think it's so typical to just want that super mom status. It looks great on paper, but who suffers? It's usually the people that are closest to us or ourselves sometimes too, like you were mentioning with health or whatever. So why do you think so many moms feel like we're not doing enough?
I think that there's so many things that go into that. First of all, I think culturally that is a mindset that occurs not just with moms but with our kids too. I have a one chapter is like talks about the good enough mom, like in the sense that we tend to think that we're always looking at our shortcomings and hardly looking at what we're doing well. I have a story in there where one time I was sitting at a baseball game talking to another mom, and this mom asked me, so what are your strengths? And I literally had nothing to say. And I realized it's not that I didn't have strengths, it's just that my mind was constantly focusing on my weaknesses, like, meditating on the things that I wasn't doing well instead of really celebrating the things that I was doing. Because I was doing a lot of things well, but I had this just hypercritical, which I think has been completely accentuated by social media. I wouldn't say that social media necessarily created it. I think that it is a long pattern that's existed that we compare ourselves and measure up, especially when we enter the mom role. But social media has definitely created another layer of it that we can be fall prey to and victims of. So we just don't really celebrate who we are and the fact that God has given us this very special role, a unique role, and as a mom, and it's a gift. And He doesn't ask us to reinvent ourselves in order to do well at it.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting because you mentioned being good, the good enough mom. So, what does that even mean, and how do we let go of that self-imposed guilt?
Good. Well, you hit a key word there, is the word guilt. And my book is written to um, Christian Christian and non-Christians to, so I like to kind of present the gospel in this book as well to people. But my point is, as believers, the Lord really tells us in his word that we are not to live under right condemnation or this feeling of guilt. And yet we tend to, as moms, what I carry this sort of bad mom shadow, because when our kids are disappointed with us or when we're disappointed with ourselves, we kind of live under this, like, well, we just didn't measure up. And often it's to unrealistic and idealistic standards. So I do want people to identify that as a really a spiritual attack, in the sense that the enemy wants you feeling downtrodden, because when you feeling downtrodden, you just carry more negativity. And the reality, what we want in our homes is joy and happiness in our homes. That's like one of the best gifts that you can give your kids. So play this out as an example, like, let's say you've had a really busy day and you are headed to takeout for dinner, and so you are just like, okay, I can't believe I'm doing this take, like, you feel, right, all that guilt, like, I didn't prepare this healthy meal, as opposed to really understanding that God has blessed you with these kids, and happy kids and a relaxed, peaceful mom is actually a better gift at that moment than fresh vegetables and stir fry. So, and it's releasing yourself and asking the Lord to give you your value, not identifying your value from the standards of the world. And what I mean by with non-Christians is just that people who don't know the Lord, I still see in a lot of women, they're still not understanding that, their self-sacrificial love to their kids is a huge gift. And we overlook that. And I want women to know that there are many children in this world that never receive a mother's love. So don't fall prey that you're not good enough when you're the one, in the trenches, stepping in and loving those kids.
I love that. What's one thing that every mom needs more of, and why?
I mentioned that in one of the first chapters of my book, is just happiness. We need happy kids. And so often I think that because we get caught up in standards and expectations, and we sometimes don't realize that those things are having a direct negative effect on the overall happiness and joy in our home. And I think that it's there's this word in circles like a deep inner joy that we all carry, but that's kind of an oxymoron because the only joy that kids see and understand is visible joy. So when we put things on ourselves that decrease happiness, or we maybe are concerned about our kids' academic performance or our social skills, but often those are our concerns more than our kids' concerns to some extent. And I think that often we don't understand what a value happy children are until we've lost that. And when you talk to moms who are really struggling in the trenches with kids who are dealing with anxiety and depression, you begin to be aware that this value of just happiness and joy, there are high values and they're worth striving for.
Absolutely. You do write in your book that good moms raise great kids, not necessarily perfect kids. Why do you say that?
Well, because there's a chapter called Great Enough Kids. Like, are the kids great enough for you? In the sense that sadly, a lot of us as parents are living out a lot of our own issues in our own parenting. And that's normal. That's life. And I think that God designed that for that we're still growing as human beings. But we need to just be aware that sometimes those are having like this. There's different types of moms, but let's for just take example, kind of the push mom who gets her child into every activity or needs to have a certain level of excellence. When you are in that push mode, you may be missing signs that your kids are struggling under those things. And often kids are trying to reach those standards, not because they're internally driven, but they're trying to please their mom in particular. And so the question is, are your kids great enough for you? That's something that we should really be asking ourselves as moms and understanding that, I have a story in there, where I had a daughter who was my number fourth child, second daughter, just really, really gifted in a lot of different activities. She was one of those kids you could probably throw her into anything and she would have done really well, but she was kind of a homebody. And when I would put her in something, we would, she just was miserable and was crying. And I'm like, this, how often, when do you measure and go, okay, I know she'd be really good at this,
Right.
but is this really worth what we're paying? So evaluating those decisions, like, is that worth the relational cost or is that worth the emotional cost to do this? Because it may not be.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually, because we have expectations on our kids, and maybe some of us want to live vicariously through them. And you have to remember that those are human beings too, and they need those good, loving relationships with you, with mom, to build resilience in themselves. And I think you write about that as well in your book.
Yes, because honestly, if you trust those gifts in God's timing, God is going to use those gifts in them when those kids are ready for it. I was really blessed to have some great teaching. Just this idea, it's called better late than early, but it's really before the age of 12, it's really too soon to say to a kid what they're gifted at or what they're not good at. And, I think that's a really helpful terminology because I see a lot of moms today talking about their gifted kids at age 7, 8, 9. And then that kind of gets them in that mode of push or they need to be doing this. And the reality is that really at age 12 and up, that's when you're really going to see things blossom, or you're going to learn things about your kids that you might not have thought that they were good at. So I just want to tell moms, like, don't peg your kids so soon. It's really doing them a disservice either way. Like, let them be kids and you will see them blossom, when in the time's right. And some blossom even later than age 12, for example.
Great advice. I love that. It looks like we are about out of time, but thanks so much for being with us today, Amy. Appreciate having you on.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Amy Rienow is the author of Not So Perfect Mom, Learning to Embrace What Matters Most. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks for watching.